the Home Affairs Portfolio Committee is inviting further public comments on certain parts of the Electoral Amendment Bill. The committee says it has sought the approval of the National Assembly to make amendments to certain clauses to extend the scope of the bill. One of the amendments is to allow independent candidates to contest more than one region for a seat in the National Assembly. Meanwhile, the Independent Electoral Commission, the IEC, says there will not be enough time to enable independent candidates to contest in the 2024 national elections. Ruling in favor of the New Nation movement, in 2020, the Constitutional Court declared the country's Electoral Act unconstitutional, giving Parliament 2 years to fix the Electoral Act. Home Affairs Portfolio Committee chairperson Mosa Chabane joins us now this morning. A very good morning to you, Mr. Chabane. Thank you so much for joining us. Welcome.
Morning and morning to your viewers.
Now, Mr. Chabane, first of all, which parts of the bill is the committee intending to amend, and what are the challenges with those parts of the bill?
You recall that the bill as introduced identifies some of the provisions that the committee had went to public hearings, commented oral submissions, and on deliberations. And there are substantial changes on the bill that the committee has made, and which require us to further, in fact, we've taken decision on those, but require us to further make a presentation to members of society to make their contributions. You know that in the bill, there was a provision that says 3 months cool-off period for independent candidates to participate, and the committee has taken a decision not to include that requirement in the bill. So we may need to take back to the community and certify our views, which we have taken as a committee. There are requirements that the bill has introduced, the participation of independent candidates, the changes of the wording in the amendment bill. So these are the issues that we seek members of the community to conduct written submissions to the committee.
And one of the clauses that you want to amend is the replacement of the word person to mean a natural person. Now, going through the process of amending this bill, Mr. Chabane, what differentiation is the committee endeavoring to make, and what potential problems are you trying to avoid down the line?
The committee as a collective has taken its position to make sure that the bill, when it goes to the National Assembly for reporting and endorsement, is that it's fair and free and fair participation of members of the independent candidates. You'll know that that it will be the first time that independent or persons find expression in participating to both the provincial legislature and the National Assembly. So we have to make sure that their participation is fair and it's not suppressed on other clauses that were on the bill. Right. For example, for participation of independent candidates, you will need deposit to participate in the election. And there was an argument from society, or those that were making argument in the public hearing, that independent candidates, the deposit must be equal to the deposit of the political party. But the committee has arrived at a different position, that the deposit can't be equal to the political party. It must be regulated by the IEC. So those are some of the issues that the committee is seeking to affirmation and submission to members of society.
Okay. And the committee seeks to amend, to also differentiate between party liaison committee and party liaison, or rather political liaison committee. Seems like a fine line to me. What's the significance of this?
The significance is that, that now that we are entering in the phase of including independent candidates to the elections of provincial and national elections. So it must be clearer in terms of their role and its significance in terms of the party liaison committee. You know that there's a political liaison committee in the IEC, the structure that interact with the IEC representing political parties. Now, when you include independent candidates as a party participant in the process, you need to shift the wording so that it represents all the stakeholders that are participating in this election that are coming.
Now, IEC Commissioner Mr. Mosa commented to the media that any changes to the Constitution would require a thorough consultation with society. Now, the mapping of the constituencies and the consensus among South Africans, and because Parliament has already been accused of trying to shut out independent candidates, what would you say in response to views, that speak to the fact that the committee is dragging its feet to delay the processes that will allow the participation of independent candidates?
I think that is an incorrect version, and I don't think that is what the Commissioner Major has presented to the forum which he has addressed. I don't think that is the correct narrative. What is indicated in our understanding is that the electoral constituency-based system will take time for the committee and the country to come to implement. For example, that will need the involvement of the MOD, those that demarcate the country and so forth and so on. You need a law that mandates them to interact with that space. We have working closely with the IEC in this process. We're working closely with the Parliamentary Legal Services and the State Law Advisor. And there was no narrative that emerged from the IEC that seeks to say that independent candidates won't participate in the coming local government elections. What is in the declaration is that we must able independent candidates to participate in the provincial legislature and national assembly. The court is what is declared, and it's what we're seized with. There was no any declaration that the parliament must change electoral system or reform in the country, and it's what we're dealing with. Some of the narrative that are emerging is that obviously in the discourse of these deliberations of electoral amendment, there will be views that seeks to say that let's go straight to electoral constituency-based electoral system or any other form of the system. And recall that the committee led by former Minister Mosa gave Cabinet or the Minister of Home Affairs 2 options that are permissible for the committee to look at for independent candidates to participate in local government, in the provincial and national elections.
Now, the New Nation movement has also applied to the Constitutional Court asking that Parliament be declared a constitutional delinquent for, having failed to meet the June deadline. I mean, just looking at what's been happening, Parliament only started its processes in earnest only early this year, whereas the ruling was made in June 2020. What caused the delay?
If you follow correctly the process, you will agree that the Constitutional Court made that declaration, and the introduction of the bill, amendment bill, was introduced in Parliament in January this year, on the 10th of January 2022. And that was referred to the Portfolio Committee. Now, the Portfolio Committee had to draw its roadmap in terms of how it must interact with this amendment bill, how it must interact with society and stakeholders. And when we've considered that it will be a short time, we may not be able to complete this process, we then approached Parliament to seek approval from the Constitutional Court. And the IEC, even in that space, supported the Parliament because IEC is the last institution that is going to implement this legislation that we're passing. So we've been granted that space. We've made sure that we interacted with that amendment bill. And that is precisely that we didn't want to short-circuit the process. We wanted to make it sure that independent candidates find fair expression in the electoral participation, as the Constitutional Court has declared that Electoral Act 3 of 1998 is unconstitutional, that it allows only adults to participate on association of political parties. So we have not been delayed. We've been working hard as a portfolio committee, and we've presented to the Parliament the interim report that so that it allows us for 14 days for these public written comments that we've already outlined earlier on. So we're convinced that we're in the same space. The NCOP, once you're done with the Parliament process, we will refer the matter to the NCOP, and the NCOP had to interact with the space. And once they've concluded, it will submit the report to the President for assent. But I think we've been working very hard as a committee so that we comply with the Constitutional Court. But taking interest, the views expressed by stakeholders, society, and individuals and political parties in the space of the discourse.
Now, having failed to meet the June deadline, now Parliament asked the ConCourt to extend the deadline, and you've been given until, December this year, to finalize the processes related to this bill. Will you have tied all the loose ends by December to meet the deadline, or are we going to be bombarded with more excuses and more requests for postponement?
Our focus now is that we must put our energy to complete this process, then submit the report to Parliament, and Parliament then, once it is endorsed and deliberated, will refer the matter to the National Council of Provinces. And we hope that because we have dealt with most of the issues in Amendment Bill, the NCOP will then interface with the issues. And the NCOP will also open opportunities, again, for submissions of members who want to deal with some of the provisions, who are not comfortable with certain issues, to interact. But we're convinced that we'll meet the deadline once all these stages have been completed. It's a very complex process, and I think we must appreciate that we've managed to at least able to respond to the issues that are residing with the amendment bill, but also the issues that members of the society, even NGOs, who have been making their submission to the committee. And I think we must also thank all of them that have contributed extensively, even where there are differences on the issues, but have contributed extensively for this amendment bill to this far.
So, Mr. Chabane, are you categorically confirming on record that this act will be in place and enacted by 2024?
We are certain that the process which is underway will be able to meet the deadline that we have requested. And I'm not saying that we will not meet the deadline. We're working towards that deadline, and we're affirming that the process we have taken so far. Look, when Parliament was on recess, the Portfolio Committee was engaging, deliberating on this matter, so that we close up, we tighten the process, and we're able to meet the deadline for Parliament to receive the report. We have now, as part of this process, request members to make a written submission so that we come closer to the completion of this amendment bill. Once the NCOP interface with that space, where I may not have authority to speak on behalf, but we're able to make sure that the constitutional deadline is respected.
Now, there are also calls for a national referendum on the electoral system to define a way forward. Would you support those calls for the public to participate in this? Because the intention perhaps is to give the decision to the public rather than Parliament.
We're elected to formulate laws, and I think that is a space which we're interacting with. And I think that the discourse on electoral reform, it doesn't start now, I think, if you can check properly. This electoral reform is the interested views of parties and individuals that we must not suppress. We must allow this discourse because it contributes to a democratic system. But the Portfolio Committee has not arrived on the opinion of what it must respond to the issues that are raised in terms of the total electoral reform. And it would be wrong for me to speak on that matter on behalf of the Portfolio Committee or Parliament, that there's that appetite or the decision that has been taken that will move towards the electoral, total constituency-based electoral reform. What we're sitting with is a process of the bill, and will present the issues that the committee has interacted with, resolved on, and the other issues will be dealt with by the Parliament if they arise. But I think at this moment, we have not taken any decision on the views that you're expressing and the stakeholders that you're referring to.
Well, because we are punting possible scenarios here. You're not being clear, and you not giving me any confidence that this act would have been enacted by 2024. So we are, just throwing around possible scenarios about the public being involved, because the public and the electorate are the key stakeholders in all electoral systems here in South Africa. So, surely that would be the greatest medium for expressing their rights through a national referendum.
No, I think that is an incorrect narrative you are putting. We are saying to you, Sipiwe, that the committee has now dealt with the interim report, adopted the A list, which give its power to present to the to the Parliament. And in Parliament, we've presented an interim report. But in terms of the rules, that there are certain clauses that substantial change in amendment bill, we may need to go back to the community or stakeholders to conduct written responses, comments on the issues that the committee has now deliberated, which are outside the amendment bill. And secondly, is that we're saying to you that the constitutional deadline is on the 10th of December, which we've been given an extension. The stages of Parliament on how we interact with amendment bill. Once the closing of the written submission has been done, the committee has deliberated on it, submitted the report to Parliament. Parliament has considered that. We refer the matter to the National Council of Provinces to interact and deliberate on the matter. If there are other issues, they will then able to interact on that. So that is the confidence that you must note, because you are doubting that we may not allow independent candidates to participate in the 2024 election. And I'm saying to you, the narrative that you are relying on, that Commissioner Miotwa has presented, It's not the correct narrative, and it's not what Commissioner Miyaza might have presented in the committee. This committee and the IEC have been working closely because we know that the last stages of implementation of this legislation is the IEC. So we must make it easier for the IEC so that it interact and include the independent candidate to participate. We are confident, NCPO, that we'll able to allow the independent candidates in terms of the process we have now undertaken.
All right, Mr. Mosa Chabane, great chatting to you. Thank you so much for joining us this morning.
Thank you.
Thank you. That was the Home Affairs Portfolio Committee Chairperson, Mosa Chabane, discussing the decision by the committee to allow further public comments on the electoral bill to make certain amendments to expand the scope of the bill. Now, the Constitutional Court, remember, has given Parliament until December to amend the Electoral Act.